Hi everyone, Kat here. How are you doing? I am going to be talking about relationships today. Predominantly thinking about, the relationship you have with your intimate partner during this, rather than kind of wider circle of friends and family relationships, I guess. The really difficult thing when you are going through this in a partnership is that usually the situation is one of you is taking the drugs and having all of the internal examinations and the blood tests, etc., and the other person in the partnership needs to support you through all of that, and then the guy performs on the day of egg collection, and it's hard even saying that because it sounds like that's not a lot to do. And I think, we could do a whole video on that, to be honest, because I think that the pressure around that, the situation that they're in, while that's happening, it can be really difficult. So I don't for a second want to belittle that. But rather than the practicalities, really, I want to talk about the emotional side of things in that relationship. And I think that, I don't know about you, but for me, I would prefer to be doing all of the drugs and the injections and all of that, because you kind of feel like you're actually doing something, which is great. And I think it must be quite frustrating for my husband, who has to watch me do that, because it must be really horrible with my husband, for him to watch someone that he loves. I know that that's how I'd feel if I had to watch him inject himself regularly and have loads of blood tests and have internal scans and examinations. So I think it's a really difficult thing emotionally on both sides. Something I've really learned over the last few years, and I've chatted to people about it too, is that in our relationships, us as the wives and our husbands have dealt with this at different paces, and predominantly the way that has manifested itself is that the husband has looked after the wife during it, and going through all of the, like I said, the injections and everything, the 2-week wait, in our cases the disappointment, whether that be a negative pregnancy test or a positive pregnancy test but with concern, and then sadly miscarrying. And I think that for me, my husband has stayed strong, really strong, like incredibly strong actually, during that time. And then what's happened is he's allowed me to really, kind of look after myself, and he's looked after me. And as the girl in the relationship, as the girl in IVF, I think a lot of people look after you, which is great, but we mustn't forget about our boys or our partners, just the other halves who are going through this, just because they're not doing all of the injections and things. They are doing this as much as we are. I'm just going to say that, as much as we are, they are in this. The important thing to remember though is that whilst my husband, looked after me, he wasn't necessarily dealing with it himself. And so what's then happened a few months down the line is that I've been lucky enough to, put one step in front of the other, pick myself up, receive huge amounts of support. And when I get to a stage that I'm feeling okay and strong again, that is when he has, really been allowed to deal with it himself. And like I say, I've had chats with lots of people. This isn't just my husband. This is, other people who have agreed. And in fact, I think someone said this to me as a piece of advice, and I think it's an amazing piece of advice, And then what happens then is, several months down the line, then they're dealing with it. And if I'm honest, to start with, I was a bit like, we're over this. What's the problem? We've kind of moved on. It's in the past. We need to focus on the future. And I think I was a bit naive at that point. I didn't realise that actually what had happened was that he had looked after me enough so that I could, feel better. And then it was his turn to grieve, his turn to deal with it, his turn to really take some time out. And so it was, like I say, someone said this to me, and it's a really interesting kind of thing to look at and examine your own relationships and see if You agree? Like, has that happened to you? That you work at different paces, and there's a really clear explanation. That's because you look after each other. And I just want to read a quote now, actually, which I saw on Instagram. I think someone posted it. And it's just the most incredible explanation of this situation. So I'm just going to read it. I've got it here. It says, "A strong marriage rarely has two strong people at the same time. It is a wife and husband who take turns being strong for each other in the moments when the other feels weak." Now that's marriage and husband and wife. Obviously, you know, whatever your partnership is, it's still, the sentiment is of course the same, you know, that we do take turns, we look after each other. And I think that it's really important to sit back and think about that, because IVF is a really difficult thing to go through in a couple, you know, and the people who go through it on their own is like, my heart goes out at their strength. It's just incredible. Again, I think that's probably another video that we could cover, so I will look into that. But the person that you're in a relationship through, when you're going through this together, is so important. And, you know, all of the cliches about it being difficult to, you know, or you hurt the people closest to you and things, I think it's something we really need to, you know, put some time together to look after each other. And so this isn't going to be a long video, to be honest, but I've got a few tips to really try and, you know, put into action, put into place, to try so hard to keep your relationship strong, because it's really difficult, but it's so important. My 3 top tips are: talk to each other. And I know that might sound really straightforward, but not only talk, ask. I remember before we got married, we went on a marriage course, and one of the things they said, my husband was dreading it, I've got to be honest. But I wasn't too worried, and actually it was really interesting, whatever relationship, you know, you're in. And what they suggested was to sit opposite each other as close as you can, knees touching, and make sure there's no distractions, no TV, radio, phones, and to talk to each other. And what I would add to that is to ask each other questions. How are you feeling? How did you feel at the appointment today? What are you looking forward to? You know, because that's what we need to think about as well. You know, what can we do? What can we do together to look forward to? How are you dealing with everything that we're going through? Do you want to keep going? Why are we continuing with this? I think it's really important sometimes to sit down and answer those questions yourself as well, but to ask the person you're with and make sure that you're both on the same page. I am no relationship counsellor, but I'd like to think that we've felt really strong throughout this whole journey, and it's not easy, you know, and there are certainly days where it's incredibly difficult, but we've stuck at it together, and that's amazing. And it doesn't always happen, you know, I don't take that for granted, that's for sure. So that's my first tip. My next tip is for anyone in any relationship, I guess, you know, even friends, you know, date night. I know we've all heard it before, but put time aside, you know, put time aside to spend with someone. It's so easy to get caught up watching Netflix, you know, and just watching box set after box set, eating dinner on your knees. You know, spend some time together, some quality time together. And that can be anything. If you know me, if you've watched my videos, if you've joined my Insta lives, you'll know that I love gardening, and I get that from Bob, you know, and we spend hours in the garden together, and it's just a really peaceful time. It's a together time. It's something we enjoy doing together. But also it's good to go out, and it might just be for a walk. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You know, we've spent a lot of time not having a lot of money during this journey, but just a walk, holding hands. And that leads me nicely onto my third point. And that is something that I heard a counsellor say fairly recently. And it was about the power of skin on skin. Now, when I said this in my Insta Live, everyone got a little bit coy and a bit shy actually, but I did get some reports back from people saying that they had had various reactions actually from their other half. Some of them had laughed at them, some of them had done this, but I had heard that the power of skin on skin, and that it's healing and it's restorative and it's a really, really intimate thing, you know, and just to lie with someone, you know, with no clothes on and just hold each other. And it is, you know, it's been proven that, you know, it is restorative, it is healing. So that is my third tip. Sleep naked together. Like, I suppose you could be naked watching the telly, you know, maybe not gardening, although, you know, whatever floats your boat and all that. But I would say that it is something that you should try and do, you know, and it might feel a bit strange to start with, don't get me wrong, but give it a go and just hold each other. Expect nothing from each other. You know, you've done the asking, you've done the talking, you've probably done the talking as well on the date night or, you know, whatever that is. But yeah, just hold each other and be there for each other, and hopefully, you know, we'll all get through this together. That's the key, isn't it? That's the hope with our happy endings. But either way, let's try and hold on to our relationships, because they're the people we want to do this with. They're the people we want to have our children with. So we want to keep them in our lives if we can. We want them to be number one. They are the most important thing. If nothing else changes, you know, I know that I want to be with my husband forever. So yeah, just look after each other. Have I totally coined that phrase from a TV show? It sounds like it. But anyway, so let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you... Do I want to know if you've slept naked together? I don't know. Let me know. You decide. I'll leave that with you. If you like this video, please subscribe below, and come and visit me over on Instagram. I am at Trying Years. You can find me there all the time, but on a Monday night at 7:30 GMT, I hold an Insta Live, and that's where a lot of the inspiration from these, or for these talks, come from. And what the Insta Live is it's me chatting for 20 minutes about a specific topic, but everyone gets involved in the conversation. Everyone comments, everyone asks questions, gives advice, you know, because I certainly haven't got all the answers. So it's a really fun place to be with people who totally get you, who totally understand you. So that's at Trying Years, Monday night at 7:30 PM GMT. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.